Hello, welcome to my studio. I'm Goshen, and today we're going to be talking about shellac and what benefits it has for painters. So first of all, what do we use shellac for? Shellac is something that we apply to our painting surfaces to prepare them for oil painting. So right here you have two examples. We have a wooden panel and we have some sheets of paper that I've prepared with shellac, and now they are ready to be worked on with oil. I'm going to explain soon how all that's done. But first let's talk about what shellac is. So shellac is an organic material. It's actually a resin secreted by insects that live mostly in India. They secrete the resin into flake forms, and then those flakes are diluted with the natured alcohol to create this liquid shellac that we find in stores today. Now, you're not going to find this material in your basic art store because it mostly is used for as a wood lacquer. That's why you're more likely to find it at places like Home Depot. I personally get mine on Amazon. It's quite easy to find and it's cost effective. So, how do you use it? Basically what you want is you want to apply a thin, even coat onto any surface that you want to use for painting on with oil. Ideally you'd be using it on either wood or paper, and you would apply it with a brush. When you choose the brush that you're going to use in order to apply shellac, don't use a soft brush. You want to get something with short, stiff fibers. Bristle does the best work in my experience, because what happens is shellac dries very, very fast, and you don't want it to kind of have pools. If you find that it's starting to pool, you want something with stiff enough fiber so that you can kind of scratch at it to spread it out evenly. Otherwise, you're going to get an uneven surface, and that's less than optimal. Another option that you have is to spread it with a rag. So any kind of cotton rag that doesn't leave any fiber residue, you can just ball it up like so and spread the shellac on the surface that you're preparing and just buff it down with the rag. The benefit to this is, as you can see, the residue of the shellac gets absorbed into the rag, and it's much easier to prevent the shellac from pooling this way. However, it's less cost effective because a big chunk of the shellac ends up on your rag as opposed to on your surface. So you've got to sort of choose. I prefer to use a rag when I'm working on smaller surfaces and a brush when I'm working on a big surface. But try it out, see what works best for you. Now, shellac can come in basically two colors. The natural color of shellac is amber. It's similar to what you see here on the rag from another time where I was using the amber shellac. The shellac that I used on these surfaces is clear, which is what you see here. You can choose whichever one you want best, whichever one works for your composition best. The amber color is pretty dominant, so if you have a composition that requires kind of a subtler background color, you might want to choose the clear one. The major benefit of the amber color shellac is that it's very, very easy while you're applying it to see which areas you've already covered. This one is so clear that it kind of makes it difficult to see which areas you've done and which areas you haven't done yet. Again, I recommend trying both of them. They're not that expensive, so it's really worth a shot. Why is it worth a shot and what's so good about it? That's what we're going to talk about now. So what I don't like about using either the acrylic gesso or the paper that's made for painting with oil is that both these surfaces are very, very absorbent. And when you paint with medium, your initial brushstrokes has a kind of luster that is derived from the qualities of your medium. If your paper or your gesso is very absorbent, you're going to come back the next day and your painting is going to completely change. I'm sure you've all had that happen to you. Then you kind of need to keep oiling out the painting in order to preserve the original colors that you painted with. And it's kind of a cat and mouse game because every time after you oil out, the gesso keeps absorbing the medium, or the oil painting paper keeps absorbing the medium, and it keeps on ending up a matte, lackluster kind of painting. And for me, it's difficult to wait for the painting to look good until the last layer, and then I put on the varnish and it finally looks good. I find that upsetting, and I prefer my painting to appear as similar as possible to the way I painted it the day I painted it, even when it's dry. Now, this is something that shellac is really good for. Because shellac, unlike let me just put this aside, unlike gesso, has no absorbent qualities at all. All it does is creates a buffer between the absorbent paper or wood and your paint/medium. It creates a buffer in between them, making your surface less absorbent. It functions like a size. It's similar to rabbit skin glue in the way that it behaves on your surface. And you're going to find that if you put a big kind of oily brushstroke on the shellac, it's not going to sink into the surface, but be careful with it, because if you put too much medium onto shellac, it's actually going to start dripping, almost as if you know you put too much shellac when you feel like you're painting on glass. That's the kind of mistake that you will make if you put too much of it. So what is too much of it? You want to put a thin coat followed by another thin coat. So 2 thin coats or 1 coat if you spill too much is definitely enough. Any more than that and your brushwork is going to feel a little slippery. If you put too much shellac on paper, there's really not much you can do to save it. If you put too much shellac on wood, you can sand it down gently and that actually creates quite a nice surface to work on if you like working on smooth surfaces. If you prefer a surface that has a little bit of tooth, when you don't sand shellac, it naturally has a little bit of grain to it, which I personally really like working on. It's a really great texture. And if you're using it on watercolor paper, it becomes a very cost-effective way to create your oil painting sketches. These specific watercolor papers I bought in those sizes, which is usually more expensive, but the best way to do it is just to buy 1 big sheet of watercolor paper, put shellac on top of it, and then you can actually crop your paper to size based on the composition. If you want a square, if you want a round format, whatever format you want. It's nice to have a stack of big watercolor sheets applied with shellac so that on the spot you can make a decision about the kind of format that you want, and if you somehow manage to create a really great painting that you want to preserve, you can actually take that piece of paper and mount it onto wood to make it more presentable, or just frame it like you would frame any kind of art print. And it works really well. It's been used for centuries, so it's actually more tested than our modern day acrylic gesso. So you don't have to worry about that. It's completely archival and very easy to use. And now I'm going to show you how I applied the shellac to both of these surfaces. Hope this helps. Hope you'll experiment with it. Leave comments below and tell me if you liked it. See ya!